Warning, the following broadcast contains adult language, adult content, frank safety discussions, and stories that might sound unbelievable. But believe me, every one of those stories is true. We didn't start the safety war, but we are going to fight to win it. For our families, for our communities, for our workplaces, and for our lives. And here we are with Hour 2, a special Hour 2. We are discussing the implosion of the Titan sub that from 2023, June of 2023, that went to attempted to go to the Titanic and ended up imploding. The U.S. Coast Guard issued a report today, or actually yesterday it's dated, but it hit the press today on today's Tuesday, August 5th, and this is going to be a special two-parter. This was a special two-parter. If you're listening to this on Safety FM, this was recorded on Tuesday, and part 1 was broadcast on Safety FM on Tuesday. Part 2 is on Wednesday, and the video streams, if you're subscribing to us on the video screens at all of our platforms, Rumble, YouTube, Safety Wars, or Jim Posel, X, you name it, we're there. No, you've already seen this, in all likelihood. So where were we? I mean, let's just face it. All this stuff here, when you look at it, and you always say, well, hindsight's 2020, and everything else. No, everything's hindsight being 2020, hindsight bias, and everything else. You say, okay, well, it's easy to go through this. But if you're in real time, and a lot of facilities, a lot of organizations, this is how they manage their safety. What you're hearing here, it may sound shocking, but it's really not shocking to people who have gone through a similar situation. That's why we have what I call the 10-year rule in safety, where after 10 years, everybody either stays in and becomes a professional safety professional, right? Progresses in their career, or they leave. It's because of situations like this. I can tell you countless situations like this. And this is where it came up to. Now, this is all, and with all due respect to Mike Rowe, right, with safety third, on Safety Wars is safety fourth. What do you mean, Jim? Safety fourth. Well, you got to get the job, do the job, get paid for the job, and be financially solvent, and then they worry about safety. Perfect example here with this, right? Because they had financial pressures, according to this report. They had a misunderstanding. I believe a fundamental misunderstanding what safety is and what's safety. Hold on. Pardon me, I had to cough. What's safety? Safety is the presence of controls and resilience, not the absence of incidents. And I can almost guarantee, even though it did not go into this report, as far as I can see, that they had the philosophy that, well, nothing happened so far, so we're less likely to have things happen and we are safe. That does not mean that. Right? With that. Now, when you're yelling and screaming at people, pointing out things that might go wrong here, and firing them and everything else, I don't know. So we're on Section 511, Weak Regulatory Framework for Domestic and International Submersibles Operation, and lack of U.S. Coast Guard submersible expertise. Right, submersibles, whether manned or unmanned, present unique challenges in terms of regulatory inspections and safety oversight. In the U.S., the U.S. Coast Guard's regulatory framework for submersibles is based on a combination of regulations, including ones for small passenger vessels, Navigation and Vessel Inspection Circular, Maritime Safety Manual, Volume 2, and classifications for ORVs. While these regulations and policies provide some general guidance, their application to submersibles is often inconsistent, outdated, and or not all-encompassing, highlighting the need for a more tailored regulatory approach. The U.S. Coast Guard's approach to submersibles, particularly with NVIC 5-93, adapts conventional surface vessel standards in an attempt to address the unique risks and characteristics of submersible operations. However, these regulations are insufficient in addressing the specific hazards. As a result, the Marine Board of Investigation identified gaps in the Coast Guard submersible safety compliance and enforcement efforts. And it goes into details. Currently, the U.S. Coast Guard does not have specific inspection standards for the design or construction of submersibles. Instead, standards under Title 46 CFR are adapted based on the submersible size, propulsion method, operational purpose, and cargo applicable. It goes on. Inspection protocols, inconsistency, and Ocean Gates, or Section 5.12, Ocean Gates Toxic Safety Culture. Ocean Gate's operational and safety practices were critically flawed, which contributed to the catastrophic implosion of the Titan Submersible. At the core of these failures was a disconnect between the company's stated safety protocols and its actual practices. Work as planned, work as done. Real simple. While Ocean Gate's 155 HSE manual was ostensibly intended to guide high-risk operations, its substance and practical application were woefully inadequate. Only 4 pages of the HSE manual address dive-specific safety procedures, a substantial shortfall for a company centered on deep-sea manned submersible operations. This highlighted system includes where submersible safety protocols are either egregiously inadequate or willfully disregarded, leaving critical risks unmitigated. The analysis reveals this disturbing pattern of misrepresentation and reckless disregard for safety in Ocean Gate's operation in Titan Submersible, with Mr. Rush seemingly using inflated numbers to bolster the perceived safety and dive count of the final hull. So, again, testing, design. Compounding these issues, the company's leadership structure concentrated virtually all decision-making power in the hands of its CEO, Mr. Rush. Although Ocean Gate had a board of directors, Mr. Rush's dominant behavior rendered it largely ineffective. Right? With this. I think we went over some of this. Right? With this. The safety of the Titan, and this is Section 5.13, undermining authority and overriding established hierarchy. The safety of the Titan submersible operations was a critical concern given the extreme depths of which it is intended to reach. And adhering to established safety protocols was paramount. According to Ocean Gate's HSE manual, the mission director was responsible for monitoring, directing, modifying, and potentially canceling a dive when it was determined that an unsafe condition exists. The mission director was also responsible for ensuring all pre-dive checks were completed for all procedures and equipment prior to commencing a dive. As Ocean Gate's key decision maker, Mr. Rush cultivated an environment where safety concerns of the mission director were often dismissed, diminished, or overruled, leading to many hazardous situations during Ocean Gate's dive excursions. These incidents exposed significant gaps in the planning, execution, and safety oversight during the Ocean Gate operations. However, OceanGate's leadership, particularly Mr. Rush, fostered an organizational culture that increased operational risks, where financial pressures, operational demands, and a disregard for safety measures overshadowed the mission's director's duties. And they mention an issue here where there was a near miss. The OceanGate near miss report for the incident, where we had a hatch that was improperly secured, highlighted how Mr. Rush's authoritative position and the pressures created by the presence of VIP guests on the excursion created a get it done or get her done mentality that did undermine safety protocols. This pressure to proceed despite dissenting opinions reflected a broader organizational tendency where operational priorities frequently overrode safety considerations. The incident highlights the risks of consolidating operational leadership roles in high-risk environments, as it can suppress open dialogue and compromise critical safety decisions. A robust safety culture requires leaders to prioritize team input and ensure all concerns are addressed before moving forward. Right? We're going to write that one down because I tell you what, again, these reports are great with this. Right? That's a robust safety culture requires leaders to prioritize team input and ensure all concerns are addressed before moving forward. Right? Another issue in May 2021, where a critical issue arose at a depth of 3 meters involving a carbon dioxide scrubber system. The pilot, who also served as OceanGate's director of logistics, reported malfunction and requested an immediate ascent. Initially, Mr. Rush denied his request to the surface despite serious risks posed by the malfunction. The director of engineering subsequently intervened in urging Mr. Rush to allow the submersible to resurface to resolve the issue. After some back and forth discussion, Mr. Rush reluctantly agreed to initiate the ascent. The decision to delay a potentially time-critical ascent underscored Mr. Rush's disregard for safety concerns, prioritizing mission continuity over crew safety. And they have multiple examples here of this. Near misses, again, leading indicators. Right, and it goes on. These examples represent only a fraction of the incidents that occurred on these expeditions. The incidents surrounding OceanGate underscore a broader lesson in organizational accountability and risk management. Right? Number 5.14, absence of a designated director of safety. The investigation into OceanGate's safety and risk assessment processes revealed several critical deficiencies that compromised the safety of their operations, particularly during expeditions to the Titanic wreck. Spilled some soda here. This lack of a the director of safety is clearly outlined in Health and Safety and Environmental Manual, specifically paragraph D of section 1, but the investigation could not identify who held this position. And several OceanGate employees indicated that they consider Mr. Rush to be the default safety officer. This lack of a dedicated director of safety meant there's not a designated individual. Pardon me, everybody. Let me clean this up before we short out all the equipment here. Right. However, the mission director, who reported directly to Mr. Rush, was frequently overruled by the pilot on the submersible-related safety issues, creating a confusing and decentralized safety culture that lacked clear lines of authority and responsibility. And we goes on again. I think we mentioned this previous in the hour, right? Where they had a protocol where if three or more things failed on the pre-inspection, there would be a abort of the mission. 5.15, lack of formal pilot training or appropriate merchant mariner credentialing. The lack of formal certification and training protocols at OceanGate significantly impacted the effectiveness and safety of the company's submersible operations, particularly regarding the qualifications of its pilots. The submersible pilot role was critical to ensuring safe and successful expeditions, yet OceanGate did not maintain proper documentation of pilot certifications and qualifications. OceanGate's former director of operations indicated that there was no official documentation for the submersible pilots at OceanGate. While Mr. Rush may have been trained and certified by a noted submersible pilot, there is no evidence to show that he was formally documented as a pilot by OceanGate despite piloting submersibles on manned dives in 2019. The structure of OceanGate's pilot training program was also insufficient. According to former Director of Logistics and Quality Assurance, who was a submersible pilot, the training program at OceanGate had a three-tier system: Level 1, Level 2, Level and 3. Level 1 pilots completed foundational training. Following this training, they served as pilots in training. Level 2 pilots were qualified to dive with a co-pilot. Level 3 pilots could operate the submersible solo. However, the training program was predominantly internal to OceanGate, with only occasional external pilots serving as contractors to provide Level 3 training. While the company published a training matrix in 2023 that showed the ratings of submersible pilots, this document lacked critical details about how the pilots achieved their qualifications, and there was no documentation indicating whether pilots or expedition members had completed their required training. Moreover, the training process was inconsistent and raised concerns about its rigor. OceanGate came to qualify pilots in a single day, even for individuals who had never operated a submersible. This approach, described by the former operations director as a huge red flag, suggested that OceanGate's pilot training was insufficient. I mean, it goes on and on and on. OceanGate did not have a dedicated manual for submersible pilots or a comprehensive training guide for the Titan Submersible. The company had a general training program with manuals and checklists that was applicable to all submersible pilots. However, there was no evidence identified by the MBI indicating that the principal pilots, OceanGate CEO and the Director of Logistics and Quality Assurance had completed a specific Titan training program that lead to Level 3 certification. A draft Titan piloting manual was created during the 2017 to 18 timeframe, but it was incomplete and did not appear to serve as a comprehensive guide for pilots operating the Titan. Right? Had OceanGate implemented a more formal, structured, and documented pilot training program, many of the critical safety issues encountered by Titan over its 3 seasons of operations could have been avoided and better mitigated. 5.16, we're on page 306 now. Disregard for safety concerns voiced by outside entities. OceanGate's approach to the development and operation of the Titan submersible showed a clear pattern of disregarding safety concerns, which resulted in serious risks to both the vessel's integrity and the safety of the crew. This neglect of safety was evident at several critical points where warnings were either ignored, downplayed, or dismissed outright, often in favor of expediency, financial consideration, or operational goals. A lot of phrases, right? this is a good one. One of the earliest indications that this disregard for safety came in 2017 when OceanGate presented its plans for the Titan at a Marine Technology Society meeting. During this meeting, several industry professionals expressed serious concerns about the submersible's carbon fiber construction and its ability to withstand the extreme conditions of deep-sea dives. These concerns were eventually consolidated into a draft letter in March 2018 intended for the CEO of OceanGate. The letter warned that OceanGate's experimental approach could result in catastrophic outcomes. The chairman of the Marine Technology Society Committee on Manned Submersibles stated the MTS Board of Directors considered the letter to be outside the bylaws of the nonprofit organization, was never formally sent to OceanGate amidst a rush. Despite the letter of concern never being formally sent to OceanGate, a draft version was sent to Mr. Rush. Mr. Rush then called the chairman of the MTS Committee on Manned Submersible and voiced his displeasure and stated that he was leaving the organization, to which the chairman stated, "Well, you can't. You never paid to be part of the association. You're a member of the Brotherhood. You belong to the community. You have a responsibility to everyone. It's not a paid ticket, so no, you cannot leave." Right? Following the implosion, MTS leadership clarified that the original concerns regarding Titan were primarily based on technical disagreements, which was within the scope of their business rules, not the safety issues raised by experts. I mean, again, we have multiple examples of things, being skipped over. In summary, OceanGate repeatedly prioritized operation goals and financial considerations over safety, ignoring warnings from both industry experts and internal staff. Had OceanGate taken the warnings more seriously, involved independent safety issues, or adhered to more rigorous testing and safety protocols, many of the risks that contributed to the eventual implosion could have been mitigated or avoided entirely. 517, failure to properly troubleshoot hull after acoustic events and safety culture relating to the operation. Again, problems with the hull were ignored. It's more the same. 518. Misrepresentation of paying passengers as mission specialists. The operations and obligations of mission specialists participating in the OceanGate Titanic expeditions were misrepresented by OceanGate as mandatory duties to conceal that their mission specialists were actually paying passengers. Wow. This sounds like the independent contractor versus employee situation here. And we went over this before. Again, they didn't. The people paid money. They did not perform little or no scientific tasks. The money paid by mission specialists went into OceanGate's operating account with no guarantee of a refund or a future opportunity for a mission specialist to participate in another drive if a mission was canceled or aborted. Right? The immediate use of mission specialist funds, they put it into their operating funds, or immediately spent the money. Added pressure to OceanGate to conduct Titan operations and fulfill its obligations and protect its reputation. Right. Again, and whenever things were, it wrote, we're mitigating things. OceanGate's former director of engineering provided the following summary to and the MBI of a lunch conversation he had with Mr. Rush regarding OceanGate's mounting financial pressures. Quote, we got back to the office. He takes me to lunch and says, hey, how about we don't have any money? We're getting sued by all the passengers that didn't get their trip. So even for this year, our year, not every dive happened. Not every passenger got to get to the bottom. So some of them were going to. I don't know if they actually sued. I never really knew what was going on with that, but you hear these things, right? You hear so-and-so was suing. I don't know if they actually sued. And the report goes on to say about, financial woes. They ask them for volunteers and on and on. Right, financial mismanagement and improper storage of the equipment here, right? We don't have to go through all of that. And I haven't been sharing screen here, sorry folks. All right. Conclusions. Here we are. Determinations of cause. So 6.1, determination of cause. The initiating event for this casualty was the loss of structural integrity of the Titan pressure vessel. Right, the loss of structural integrity caused the catastrophic implosion of the hull. Right, and the probable failure point of the hull was either the adhesive joint between Titan's forward dome and the titanium segment of the carbon fiber hull near the forward end of Titan. The causal factors leading the event were, design was not adequate, no meaningful analysis about the life cycle, overlines on an RTM system, whatever that is, to assess the condition of the Titan's carbon fiber hull. OceanGate continued to use the Titan for operations after a series of incidents that likely compromised the integrity of the hull. Right, and other critical components. No operational procedure on dealing with investigations. No maintenance plan. Right, the carbon fiber hull design and construction in terms of winding, curing, gluing thickness of a hull, and manufacturing standards introduced flaws that weakened the original structural integrity. OceanGate's toxic safety culture, corporate structure, and operational practices were critically flawed, and at the core of these failures were glaring disparities between the written safety protocols and their actual practices. During early OceanGate ORV operations, Mr. Rush's intentional systemic efforts to misrepresent previous submersibles compliance with standards and partnerships relating to safety, engineering, regulatory oversight provided a false sense of security for their passengers. A false sense of safety and security was created by Mr. Rush. OceanGate's management, particularly Mr. Rush, fostered an organizational culture that increased operational risk and allowed financial pressures, operational demands, mission specialist expectations to override their mission directors' duties and authorities. Financial pressure. Lack of comprehensive and effective updated regulations and policies with oversight and operation of manned submersibles, especially of a new design constructed by the U.S., is likely contributed to Mr. Rush's decision to proceed completely outside the existing regulatory framework. Right. Evidence or active violations of my law by any Coast Guard credentialed mariner is subject to suspension or revocation. Had Mr. Rush survived the casualty while serving as the master of the Titan, the MBI would have recommended that the commandant initiate administrative action seeking revocation of Mr. Rush's Marine Mariner certificate. The MBI found that Mr. Rush acted outside the scope of the credentials authority in multiple respects. First, he served as the master of a passenger-carrying submersible operating outside the U.S. inland waters, without the vessel being properly certified as a small passenger vessel under applicable U.S. law. Second, Mr. Rush's MMC was limited to service on vessels operating exclusively on inland routes, meaning inland waters, and not authorized operations in the area where Titan was deployed. Accordingly, the MBI concluded that Mr. Rush's actions constituted misconduct and fell outside the legal scope of his credentialed authority. 6.3. Evidence of violations by Coast Guard personnel or any other person. There are no acts of misconduct, incompetence, negligence, unskillfulness, or violations of law by Coast Guard employees or any other personnel that contributed to this casualty. Right, and there's Ocean Gate has ceased operations, so there are no fines against them. Again, they don't have the authority to prosecute, but make recommendations. 7. Actions taken since the incident. In response to the Titan tragedy, key actions have been completed to enhance interaction between the U.S. Coast Guard and OSHA regarding SVA coordination. OSHA now sends all SVA reports to group email at CGINV that is monitored by a full-time duty rotation that coordinates interagency responses to major marine casualties. The Coast Guard has also established internal procedures for receiving, tracking, and responding to OSHA-reported SVA and other types of whistleblower cases. And they had a recent training session on this. Since the incident, 7.2, the Coast Guard has significantly increased its professional interactions in the submersible industry through various exchanges and revenues. These interactions include participation in industry conferences. And again, case studies on this and everything. So now we're down to the recommendations. They came out with 14 recommendations. Let's see what they are. Recommendation number 1, update regulations. Right? With this, an industry working group and update regulations. Again, the way things are set up, it's incentivizing bad behavior. Recommending number 2, the U.S. Coast Guard should pursue an expansion of federal requirements to ensure proper regulatory oversight of submersibles that perform oceanographic research operations. Number 3, the Office of Commercial Vessel Compliance should ensure any existing submersible ORVs have their ORV letters of designation revoked. And the owners and operators should be directed to pursue inspection for recertification and under the applicable passenger vessel requirements as described in number 2. Recommendation number 4. Updating policies for service vessels not subject to inspection. Recommendation number 5. The appropriate office at the Coast Guard headquarters should harmonize existing regulations regarding what constitutes a legally chartered ORV, including a clarification of what constitutes persons allowed to be carried on other than ORV operators. Recommendation number 6. The U.S. Coast Guard should pursue a new regulation which requires all submersibles manufactured, owned, or operated by a U.S. entity or any submersible operating U.S. navigable waters carrying any occupant other than the owner to be built to the standards of a Coast Guard RO and maintained under those standards. U.S. Coast Guard should soon update the vessel documentation requirements, require all U.S. submersibles that conduct commercial or scientific operations to obtain a U.S. Coast Guard certificate of documentation with an official number assigned and recorded and placed in a database. U.S. Coast Guard should review, I mentioned this, Marine Safety Manual and regulations and address regulatory gaps. U.S. Coast Guard, number 9, U.S. Coast Guard should pursue development of an OSHA U.S. Coast Guard Memorandum of Understanding on SBA program, investigative authorities, responsibilities, and procedures. U.S. number 10, U.S. Coast Guard should add resources and expertise for the SIM travel inspection, training support, and NCO staff. The U.S. Coast Guard Office of Search and Rescue should conduct an evaluation of U.S. Coast Guard SUBSEA, SAR, search and rescue capabilities in conjunction with the U.S. Navy, commercial subsea entities, and international agency partners to ensure readiness for domestic and international incidents within the search and rescue zones. No enhanced readiness. Update on the design guidelines for the design, construction, and operation of passenger submersible craft. Number 13, better communication abilities with this. And number 14, pursue a new requirement mandating the owners of submersibles conducting commercial and scientific operations provide notification to the local Coast Guard prior to conducting operations. And that's basically it. And again, they say, I don't know. What do you think? You know what I think? I look at this, I'm like, there's a lot of stuff to be learned here. And I think it's going to be one of those things that we learn for years here with this. And that's what it is. So, for Safety Wars, this is Jim Posel. We're done with this, and we're going to have some other programming after this. For Safety Wars, this is Jim Posel.
Safety Wars is streaming now.
SafetyFM.com. Have you listened or watched the Safety War show? It does stream live on the radio and on the streamer-emers that we have. So if you have not taken a listen to Jim Posel and what the hell he's doing every evening with Safety Wars, I would strongly encourage you to take a view or take a listen, whichever option is available for you, and take a listen to what the hell he has going on. It will take some deep dives and some information that you might be interested in.
OSHA recordables, catastrophic losses, environmental disasters. You want answers? So do I. This is Jim Posel with Safety Wars.
That's my daddy! The safety war has begun. The risks are out there, lurking in every corner of the workplace, threatening our most valuable asset, our people. But we have a plan. Led by Jim Posel, we are the last line of defense in this battle against danger and negligence. We will fight for safety, for compliance, for the right of every worker to return home unscathed. Join us on this journey through the unknown, where vigilance is our weapon and knowledge is our shield. This is Safety Wars, our fight, our duty, our mission. Heard regularly on your favorite podcast platform as Safety Wars, visit us at safetywars.com.
So what did you think? Pretty in-depth kind of situation here. So that was filmed last night. We're going to continue with a brief program now. Some discussion. I mean, There's a lot to be gotten here. So this morning I was with a client, and we had a discussion on this. No, we're not going to go into in-depth engineering here, but some of the safety management end here. And with the organizations I work with, we went over some of this. Namely, we went over safety fourth. That was an issue here. And again, I was the first one to say safety fourth. No offense to Mike Rowe. Safety can only be the fourth highest priority. First, you got to get the job, then you got to do the job, then you got to get paid for the job and be financially solvent. Then we worry about safety. Perfect case here. I don't think that there was a case that could be made better than what we went through here with the Titan Submersible Accident. We also had, the other phrase that I use, if you want to be safe, let's start out by not breaking the freaking law. Well, look at what happened here when the Titan Submersible allegedly circumventing regulations, bending the rules. One thing that I learned was just because your vessel is not flagged in the United States, is not registered in the United States, if you're a U.S. citizen, guess what? My understanding is, based on these discussions, is that you need to comply with U.S. law. Usually, hey, you're outside of U.S. border, guess what? You're not subject to U.S. law. We have carve-outs for that, for certain crimes involving children, drugs maybe, and with this one also. Some of the other things, those meetings that we go to. We have safety meetings. We have toolbox talks. We have planning meetings. We have scheduling meetings. Does your organization have these meetings and everybody's got everybody relevant, that is, has a say to that? When I say relevant, that's probably all of your employees, all the participants, all the stakeholders. Do you have a say in that? Or are you encouraged to speak up? Or are you encouraged to shut the bleep up and, do as you're told? All of that goes into that. Because that's not what happened here with this whole thing. Because people were fired for speaking up. Another thing. Email. When I have an important email to send, if you're working with me, hey, that's an important email. Guess what Jimmy does? Any idea? I followed up with a text message, another email, or a phone call. So in 2018, I think it was, right when they filed a whistleblower complaint, I went to OSHA. OSHA normally does not handle things on the water, so sent it over to the U.S. Coast Guard. The person had been promoted or had moved on, who was assigned to receive those whistleblower emails, and it went nowhere. And again, no follow-up. Had it been me, I would have followed it up. And I'm not just saying that 20/20 hindsight. But when you send something to a regulatory agency, you have to do follow-up. There is one OSHA area office, I won't mention where you had, I had a client. I said to my client, this is what you need to do. This is what I want you to do. I want you to email the response to OSHA like they requested. Then we're going to fax it over, and then right back when people have fax machines. Then you're going to send it by certified mail. Then you're going to send it by FedEx, so that's return receipt. And then I'll hand deliver it. and we'll have a letter transmittal, and someone's gonna. So now 5 ways to Sunday, they're getting it. What do you think happened after the 15 day window came out for contesting this and everything? What do you think happened? On the 16th or 17th day, we got a phone call. We never received anything here. We received nothing. Right? So the client calls you up and says, WTF, because the person who I had been dealing with, honestly, right, was not there. He was, I believe it was a day off or vacation when this phone call came in, or sick or something legitimate. And, well, I said, what do you mean they didn't receive it? Well, nobody knows it, which was, they were all lying to this person. I said, it was emailed to them. It was, and I went through the whole list. They didn't receive it. If they say they didn't receive it, it's 100% on them. They called back, and by the way, the OSHA representative was not very nice about it. He was yelling, screaming, and cursing the client out. How do we know? We got it on tape. When the guy started to lose it on the phone. Again, New Jersey, single-party consent state. So, the guy's, well, guess what? Nobody in his office had the paperwork. They call back about 20 minutes later. Oh, yeah, those people are a pain in the neck because they did this, they did that. What, they didn't think we weren't going to get it? Yeah, I didn't think you were going to get it. You just proved that you lost it in your office. So this also goes on to prove, and there are other issues, engineering issues, financial insolvency issues, all this stuff went in there. But what happens? Like there used to be a commercial, little things mean a lot. Now you have that Jenga puzzle, and you keep taking that Jenga puzzle, and you keep putting it on top. Eventually falls over. What do you have? You have an accident. Oh, yeah. My shirt's not even buttoned. But, yeah. What am I doing here? Looking like a bum. But anyway, that's, the Jenga tower. The Jenga puzzle keeps going up higher and higher until it falls over because you have all of this crap going on before something happens. Very interesting with this. So this is still in the news here. There are some other stories here. Let's see if we can review some of them. Hold on. Let's see here. Just had it up. So this is from the Wall Street Journal yesterday. Okay, let's see if we come on. I'm signed in. All right. Deadly Titan Submersible implosion, preventable disaster, Coast Guard concludes. OceanGate's failure to meet safety standards led to the 2023 implosion. Remember here, all right? The catastrophic implosion, and I can't share this, by the way, of the Titan Submersible garnered worldwide attention. A days-long search and rescue operation was launched after the submersible lost contact during the June 18, 2023 dive. The implosion killed all 5 people on board. OceanGate's Rush, Mr. Rush, Paul Henry Negroletta, considered leading authority in the Titanic, Shahzada and Sulman Dawood, members of one of Pakistan's richest families, and Hamish Harding, a British aviator and explorer. And it goes down here, right, with a little bit of the history. And the company and the report listed more than a dozen recommendations, including new requirements, regulations to ensure submersibles meet regulatory standards. Right? OceanGate would cut corners and failed to give priority to safety. Former staffers testified last year in a hearing for the Coast Guard's investigation. The former employees said Rush didn't like to be pushed on safety concerns and made most of his company's major engineering decisions. The company previously faced criticism from some in the industry for not getting an independent safety verification for the Titan Submersible. Early intervention may have resulted in OceanGate pursuing regulatory compliance abandoning their plans for Titanic expeditions. Okay, all well and good, right? Well, we spent roughly an hour and 35 minutes going into this so far. It's amazing to me. I mean, it would have been useful that it said the Coast Guard, their regulations allowed this to happen, basically. And federal regulations allowed this to happen. That would have been good in there. This way they put, right, all of the blame on the company on this. Now, you may say, well, look, Russia was one to blame. Okay, great. Made decisions. Why do people make the decisions that they make? And then something happens and everyone points the fingers. People make decisions based on what? An incentive structure, some type of incentives. And incentives could be monetary or not monetary, tangibles and intangibles. In this case, they had an incentive. It was a financial incentive here, number one. Number two was ego. You can't argue. Some of these interviews you see with the people in charge, ego. Even, I believe it was an interview with 60 Minutes, CBS News, something like that. And everything, right, with that. Now, we have had submersibles for an awful long time, private submersibles. Why didn't the Coast Guard have regulations or the government have regulations in place for this? Where was the oversight? Who told this guy? And believe me, I've had clients, call me ex post facto after the fact from an OSHA audit, saying, "Well, we went to somewhere, and they told us at this conference that we did not have to comply with HAZCOM." I said. And then we go through, I said, well, who told you that? Well, this guy. I said, well, I would suggest you call up the guy and send him the bill that OSHA is going to send you. Just to make a point to him. Well, I can't do that. He's in the industry. Well, he told you something wrong. You have to comply with OSHA. HAZCOM is part of OSHA. You have to have SDSs. You have to do employee exposure assessments when you are using this material. Something. Well, we were told, no, it was a lot of the same attitude. And that's not, and that kind of attitude leads to injuries, accidents, fatalities, everything else that goes in there. Let alone the compliance stuff. That's one of the things, right? With that. Right? And also, right, this is going back for a while. And apparently there's been a movie with this also a couple months ago. And one of the things, the family of Mr. Titanic seeks $50 million for wrongful death over Titan implosion. The family of a French explorer who died last year, and this is a story from August 7, 2024. On expedition to the Titanic, has filed a wrongful death lawsuit against the submersible's operator, OceanGate, alleging gross negligence. That report yesterday doesn't look too good for you, but I doubt they're going to collect a dime here. Again, the U.S. Coast Guard said the vessel is believed to have suffered a catastrophic implosion, and, this is before the investigation was there. A top-secret military acoustic detection system heard what the U.S. Navy suspected to be the Titan implosion shortly after the submersible disappeared. Now, what I find incredible here, this acoustic detection system was installed sometime in the mid to late 1950s and remained a national secret until this accident. right? It was a top secret type thing. That in itself is incredible. On that. No, they have all different kinds of stuff out there. Another story we'll do some follow-up on. How much do we have left? All right. So, also from the Wall Street Journal on August 4th, that was funny. Real strains inside the BLS, Bureau of Labor Statistics, made them vulnerable to Trump's accusations. This gives us the a little bit more context of what's going on there. In the past few years, the BLS has faced tighter budgets and falling response rates to its surveys. In recent months, it faced staff shortages brought on by a hiring freeze Trump declared in January. So nobody was cut, just hiring freeze. People leaving, right? We were all familiar with what happened there. Those internal pressures made the agency more vulnerable to attack from the president, who seized on routine statistical revisions to claim that the Bureau is stacking the numbers against him for political reasons. Trump and other White House officials have offered no proof of wrongdoing and instead cite the size in the recent revisions to the jobs numbers. Well, again, here, you got to read a little bit more into the article. The revision was that was a net loss of 258,000 fewer jobs, right? So they reported one number, and then it turned out to be 258,000 less. Right? Economists rushed to defend the agency's former chief, Erica McIntyre, and said regular revisions are the hallmark of data integrity. Yet the latest revisions, when they were released last week, caused a stir in the usually staid and steady world of economic data. They point to a challenge that has dogged the agencies for years. A requirement to quickly produce accurate economic data when many households and businesses respond to surveys. Right? Again, we're used to seeing things go back. We're back and forth. Each month, BLS surveys, and this is where we're getting some conflicting information in the reports. Surveys about 120,000 employers by phone or online to track the number of jobs in the economy, one of the world's largest sophisticated monthly polls. Many businesses don't reply on time, up from under 20% a decade ago, right? Many businesses, about 30 to 40% in recent months, don't reply on time, up from a decade ago, 1 in 5 did not replied. Now it's 2 in 5. At the end of each month, BLS uses the data it has on hand to make first estimate, then it updates that estimate in each of the following 2 months based on late replies and a revised seasonal adjustment. So a little bit of quote-unquote black magic there. If the employers replying late happen to give different information from the first batch, as happened this summer, big revisions are likely. For example, Friday's data showed that in May and June there were about 109,000 fewer jobs for educators at state and local government than previously thought. Late responding schools were responsible for the bulk of the revision, said Omer Sharif, founder of Analytics Inflation Insights, and going on and on. Gives us a little bit more context on here. My question is this: there were multiple people here that were what's the word I'm looking for? Let go, right? Paid and unpaid. Why do we need so many people doing oversight? I thought that they'd have this down by now. I don't know. But that's all I have for tonight. Wanted to get on for a couple minutes, and we hope to see you tomorrow. For Safety Wars and Safety FM, this is Jim Posel. We will see you, God willing, tomorrow.
The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast are only examples. They should not be utilized in the real world as the only solution available, as they are based only on very limited and dated open source information. Assumptions made within this analysis are not reflective of the position of the company. No part of this podcast may be reproduced, stored in a retrieval system, or transmitted in any form or by any means, mechanical, electronic. The views and opinions expressed on this podcast are those of the host and its guest and do not necessarily reflect the official policy or position of the company. Examples of analysis discussed within this podcast